What's going on, everybody? This is the Growing Up Italian podcast. I'm your host, Rocco, and I am here with the legendary voice of the LA Galaxy, Joe Tutino. Joe, it's finally nice to put a face to it. And
Well, thank you. I don't know about being legendary, but thank you. That's nice.
I mean, your voice is iconic. I feel like everybody in the soccer, the gaucho industry has heard it before. So it's great to finally connect with you, be able to see you face to face. We met on Clubhouse randomly. I forgot what room it was. I think it was like a Juve Inter recap discussion. And then
That's what it was. That's exactly what it was. I wanted to see how, people felt about the match. And unfortunately, I had not seen the entire match. So I was kind of thumbing through the highlights at the time you guys were talking about it. And wasn't very pretty, obviously. But yesterday's match was even more ugly. And watching Napoli against Atalanta, that was rough to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you still keep in touch with the Serie A. Obviously, you work for the MLS, and we're gonna get into that whole aspect and what you're doing there. But give the viewers a solid introduction.
My name is Joe Tutino. I'm a first-generation Italian American in San Diego, California. That's where my parents migrated to. In fact, my father migrated here first, and then met my aunt and uncle who migrated after him on my mom's side. And my father saw a picture of my mom and basically received some help from my aunt writing letters back to my mom, and ended up marrying her, bringing her here, and all of a sudden we were in San Diego. My dad was a fisherman to start, and ended his career as a cement finisher. So we're blue collar through and through, and we still speak Italian at my mom's house. My father, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but that's life these days, unfortunately. And we're still close. Everybody's here in San Diego, both my brothers and their kids, and aunts and uncles and cousins. So we all just kind of made our way here.
Yeah, I love that story, especially the way your parents met. I feel like that was such an old school way and very well-mannered, well brought up, well-educated. And, you don't hear stories like that anymore. Writing love letters or oh, I would love to know so-and-so. It was different back in the day. So it's amazing.
You write a love letter today, they'll put you on blast and they'll ruin your life.
It's like you get screenshot and forget it.
It's over. It's over. You can't court or anything like that anymore. It's a different world today. But certainly I feel fortunate, like you do, I'm sure, growing up in an Italian household with Italian traditions, homemade bread, homemade cookies, everything that they brought from Italy stayed in that vacuum, and we grew up around it. And our friends and neighbors, the Americans, they loved coming over and eating my mom's cookies all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said that, because there's nothing more important to us than meeting people, relating to people with all these things. I'm just curious to how your family wound up in San Diego. Like, what made them go that route instead of the East Coast? You know what I mean? Was there
Well, a couple things happened. My father's uncle was in the United States before the Depression, and he was actually in Milwaukee. And when the Depression hit, many people lost everything, somewhat like what's happening right now. But at that time, the Depression, he lost everything, and they just picked up and they went to the farthest southwest corner of the United States. And he was in construction at the time. And my father was in Italy as a child. And unfortunately for my dad, during World War II, his father was killed. And so my father was 11 years old. He had his mom, he had his older sister, and he had his baby sister to care for at 11 years old. And they had to go off and work for grain or whatever and bring that back to his mom, and she would sell it, and that's how they would go live their life at that time. Sure. My grandmother was a seamstress, and so she did her work. My grandfather, from what I understand, was a painter, similar to frescoes. So there are ceilings and homes and things like that in Sicily that I believe still have some of his work there.
Awesome. That's awesome.
But what happened was my uncle had basically sponsored my father and his sister and the little baby, my Aunt Rose, to come over. And they came through Ellis Island, 1953, and by train came to San Diego and tried to set up in Little Italy here in San Diego. We had a very large fishing fleet here. It was the largest in the Pacific, if not one of the largest in the world at the time. for tuna, and we had all the canneries here in San Diego at the time. Chicken of the Sea, Starkist, Van Camps, they were all here in San Diego. And so my father, who was fishing in Italy as he got older, and he came over and he was 21 years old, um, continued to fish here in San Diego. And so on one side, I don't know if you've ever been to San Diego, there is Little Italy on one side of the bay, and on
I've
the other side is a Point Loma where all the Portuguese are. So you had the Portuguese and the Italians with the fishing boats, and that's how it worked. And so my father, he lived in Little Italy, which was very large at the time here in San Diego, and it's still pretty good. But everybody just lived in Little Italy here in San Diego, and that's how it was for the Italians until the city began to grow up. And unfortunately for that part of town, the 5 freeway, the Interstate 5, had to go through there, and many of them scattered. But Little Italy's still going strong here for us.
good. I'm
But
glad.
that's kind of the roundabout story of how we ended up in Southern California, the furthest southwest corner of the United States.
I think it goes for a lot of cultures when they first migrate, but especially for Italians, they stick together. You know what I mean? So if they
Sure.
are going somewhere, they're gonna form an Italian community elsewhere, whether it be New York, Pittsburgh, Philly, uh, New Jersey, Chicago, San
Yeah.
Francisco, San Diego. They form all these Italian communities and they try and hold on to it as best as they can. And it's part of the reason why we started this page to hold on to those values because a lot of these neighborhoods are disintegrating and they're changing for better, for worse, whatever it may be. But the Italian communities are not as seen as much as they used to be. So it's great.
They're not as connected. That's right. You're right. We are not as connected as we used to be. Probably when my brothers were young. I came a little bit later, and my parents already had moved to the home where they raised our family. But when my older brothers were born, they were born in Little Italy, running around there. And in fact, they spoke Italian first. I spoke Italian first, but I also spoke English well enough to get along. So I was already kind of
Right.
moving along. Whereas my brothers kind of struggled a little bit with English because it was all Italian for them all the time.
Gotcha. And I think that's kind of how it was for me growing up. Italian was my first language, so it's great seeing the similarities between us two. But let's start talking about you, Joe, and your whole broadcasting experience and all that whole industry. When did you start broadcasting?
I started in the business in 1989. Basically, soccer led me to
That 43 years ago?
broadcasting.
42 years ago?
30, what is it now? 32 years ago. You're right.
Freaking
Outstanding. What it did was soccer led me to broadcasting. And in high school, I was a soccer goalkeeper. I was rather round for most of my life. I was obese for most of my life, but I was able to overcome that and be a pretty good goalkeeper. But in high school, when things start to change and you hit your growth spurt and all that other stuff, and you lose that weight, that didn't happen for me. And I got injured. I hurt my knee. And as you guys know, you're either going to be really good and go to college and do something really, you know, uh,
right.
really great, or you're going to go find a job. And I'm a sophomore in high school, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea. And basically, what happened was I was sitting in my history class, and I figured, well, if I can't play sports, I need to be close to sports. And at that time, we didn't have any broadcast or TV broadcast studios in high school, and we had a journalism class. And I went over to my counselor, and I said, I know what I want to do. And I said, put me in the journalism class. I'm going to be a sports writer. And for my final 2 years of high school, I was the sports editor of the newspaper and had my own column, and I talked some trash, and I learned the journalism trade from high school and moved on from there. And I thought I was going to be a sports writer, but I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted after high school out of either community college or San Diego State University. They both had pretty good journalism schools, but I saw a broadcasting school commercial on television at my parents' house, and I decided, I'm watching sports and I kind of see the plays develop, whether it's football or soccer, and and my voice kind of projects. Maybe I can do that. So I called the school, and it was Columbia School of Broadcasting. It was a national school at the time, and it was based out of Los Angeles. And we ended up having a satellite campus here in San Diego. And the director of the school here in San Diego happened to be a friend of my brother's. I had no idea. But when I met him, his name is Freddie Carini, and that got me into it. And those are the type of schools, they'll take your money. You better get it done.
Right.
And light a fire, right? Light a fire under your butt. And that's what I did. And got into a news station here in San Diego. I was the morning news producer. The owner of the station wanted to make it all sports. At that time, it was WFAN as really the only sports station. There was another station in Toronto, KFAN, The Fan in Toronto. And sure enough, we were the next ones to become all sports in the United States. And it was at that time was the mighty 690 all sports radio. And then we turned to extra sports 690. And the great thing about our station was that we all had journalistic backgrounds. We went from a news station to a sports station, and everybody was young. We worked our tails off. We worked 14, 16 hours a day, and we loved it, and we never complained about making no money at all. And basically in February of 91, I was teamed with a guy named Jim Rome, and we built the Jim Rome Show, he and I. And we made it a national show. It's still going today. We worked together for 5 years, and we made names for ourselves. Jim wanted to be a national talk show host. I became the executive producer of the station at the time, and I was on the air, and I started to do play-by-play. At that time, we had an indoor league. We didn't have an outdoor league, and I was doing play-by-play for a team in Anaheim. And when we came to the point of having to sell the show, we had to make a decision of whether I was going to go with the show and go live in Los Angeles and continue to be the producer of the show and give up my aspirations of being a play-by-play announcer, or stay in San Diego, run the sports station, and continue to do my play-by-play and build my on-air career.
Right.
And the decision was made at that time that we would split. Jim, of course, is immensely successful, and I've been chipping away and doing the things that I love.
Exactly. And I think when you find what you love and you cherish that, you'll always be happy at the end of the day. A lot of these people nowadays, they're afraid of making that commitment to going into your field because, like you said, going to start, the money is not great. And a lot of people get dissuaded by that and discouraged. But, if you want something and you truly love it, you won't be looking at that kind of stuff. Maybe down the line, there'll be a concern. But I think when it's down the line, you will be financially steady at that point. You would get to where you need to be. Hopefully. It's not the case for everybody, but I love hearing your story because now a lot of people know about that industry, the in-betweens. Like you said, you had to part ways with it. But one of your partners, it's something that you literally built from the foundation up. So that's not easy to part ways with something, especially working on it for 5 years, you said?
Yeah, we're pretty proud of it because at that time, sports radio was still evolving, and we really created something that really made sports radio successful. And especially on the West Coast, where we have a lot of transplants, and we could not do sports radio like WFAN or like any other stations on the East Coast that talk just about their cities, because everybody out here is from everywhere else, and they like their Cubs, and they like their Yankees, and they like the Red Sox. And we had to incorporate that. We had to be national sports radio for Southern California. And luckily, we had this massive signal that went from San Diego all the way up the West Coast and to the California-Nevada border. And we were able to really, with this umbrella, bring everybody in and do something very special, not only with that show, but also across the board. And our station had to be, was the home of the Chargers. We were the home of the UCLA Bruins. We were the home of the LA Kings when Gretzky was with the Kings. So we had a lot going on, and we were just in the right place at the right time. And today it's different. Today, sports radio has changed. It's transitioned. Radio itself has transitioned into, podcasting, into what we're doing today, video logs, so to speak. And so you have to have your head on a swivel today to do a lot of different things and try to continue to be successful and make a name for yourself. And it's a lot of Dow Jonesing going on right now in our business before it settles down and we figure out how to get from here to there and continue to be, and to have integrity on the air. There's a lot of junk out there right now that tends to get people's attention.
Yes.
But those are short-lived things. And to be to be legacy, you have to continue to stay within yourself, in my opinion, and have credibility and not waver from that.
Yeah, for sure. And I had a lot of questions for you, but I feel like you explained it very thoroughly throughout the past 5 minutes or so. And I think it's great for people looking to get into this field to become more knowledgeable in these things. And I think that you really hit the nail on the head. But let's jump into the MLS now. Let's transition to where your specialty is right now. Announcing for the LA Galaxy. What's that like, man? You got to tell us what's the feelings going into each matchup every day, play by play. You and your co-host getting the job done. How, as an Italian American, it's great seeing a fellow Italian American, handling the mic, doing his thing out there. But you speak for yourself, man. What is going through your head when you're doing all that?
Well, it's a dream come true. I mean, to me, I'm one of the early birds. I love to get to the stadium early. I like to have the whole day come to me. And so when we're on television, Kobe Jones does the games with me on television. And when we're there, it's interesting because I broadcast all of Kobe's games with the LA Galaxy, and now he's next to me, and I get a different perspective. The guy that I used to broadcast games for, who I thought was a certain way, to the guy that I know, and on radio, Kobe does home games with me. In a way, radio. Kevin Hartman, the former goalkeeper there, is my guy in the booth with me. So it's an interesting thing to get to know these guys in a different way and to be able to make the connection with them in terms of mentally how they see the game compared to somebody who didn't play it professionally, how I see the game.
Right.
So that's the great thing about that. In terms of being able to broadcast soccer, I've spent an entire career going out of my way for the sport of soccer. I mean, I was the executive producer of the Chargers broadcast. I built the San Diego Padres broadcast on radio for the stations I worked for. I was doing all that stuff. My love is soccer. And I played the game, and I wanted to broadcast the game. Early on in my career, we had no outdoor league. We had an indoor league that was falling apart every 2 days. If your team didn't win, they probably would fold. So I'm basically hanging on in the early part of my career. And for me to be able to do it now, where a lot of people believe Major League Soccer is on their way, I don't take that for granted at all. So I still do things the way I did things when I got into this league and in this sport. I mean, I believe in fundamentals, and I believe in getting there early. I believe in letting the game come to you. I love working with my producers and the directors and anybody with a stage hand, getting to know them, see what they're all about, and making sure that they're all at ease, because once the game gets underway, I have to lead the way. And if everybody, as long as I can keep everybody at ease, we'll deliver the game and we'll have a good game. And we've done some games that are difficult to pull off. I mean, we've had situations in Canada where our transmission is down right until the start of kickoff, whether we didn't know we had video, but we had audio. And I'll tell a director who was stuck back in LA, say, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Just keep us on the air and we'll take care of it and we'll get it done. But through all this, we've seen a league grow up. We've seen a sport grow up in this country. There's some people that still love the old NASL, and we had great players there in the NASL, and I grew up watching the NASL, and that's where my passion came from. But looking at Major League Soccer, that's a whole different animal now today. And we have American players who can play. We have players from South America that are incredible, and Central America that are incredible, and we're getting players here from Europe that still have meat on the bone and are contributing today at this version of Major League Soccer. And we're just getting better and better and better. And we're seeing the U.S. men's national team now bounce back and go back into under the front foot and look like they're going to be doing some damage here going forward. And we're in a good time. The unfortunate thing is we're all stuck at home and we can't really do everything we want to do to engage in our sport and in our career. Sure. To take it to the next level. So we're all in a kind of this holding pattern, like you're an airplane waiting to land, and it's a little frustrating.
Definitely frustrating, with everything going on in today's world. It's hard to imagine what some people are going through, on and off the pitch. So it's a lot of issues going on, but we got to keep going on, keep pushing, keep remaining strong, and keep doing our thing. Somebody like you who's passionate on this will always find a way. And I would love to be in the industry with you, because you sound so relaxing to work with. You don't sound like somebody who's going to jump down your throat. You sound like somebody super chill, and I like that. You make everybody feel comfortable. And with somebody like you, it makes it, like you said, everybody's at ease, getting the job done.
Yeah.
So it's cool to
Early
see.
on in my career, I was pretty intense. Let's put it that way. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I'm
was
sure it
given the
was.
nickname of Bulldog for a reason because I was pretty intense and relentless in getting things done. And part of that is still in me. But you learn along the way to,
Right.
to where you're going to push, and you learn about people and how, put them in the proper positions to where they can succeed.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think that you learn that over the years as well, and just
Yeah.
become more of a leader. But brings me to the next point about the MLS. I think it's growing within the past 10 years, especially. I paid a lot more attention to it. It's weird because here in New York we have the Red Bull and the
Hmm.
NYCFC, so it's like I originally was a Red Bulls fan, and NYCFC came here, so it's like, what do you do at that point? But it was great seeing Pirlo play for NYCFC. We have Jovinko, who was in Toronto. And then, of course, you had the pleasure of announcing Zlatan and David
Sure.
Beckham. That's like two legendary players. But in terms of MLS, like why is it the constant perception that the MLS is bad? Why is there that perception?
Well, I think, the unfortunate thing is people look at the United States and they don't look at the U.S. as being a soccer country at this point. They think it's basketball, baseball, football, American football, and so that's already the perception that you have. And frankly, our best finish of the World Cup was quarterfinals. And some people will I'll go back and say, hey, probably outplayed Germany, deserved a handball, and a ball that was in the net that was never called a goal, and it could have been different. But having said that, we cycle. After 2002, we had a terrible performance in 2006. We did a little better in 2010. We changed our coach and we went a different direction there. And we did about the same in 14. And then we had this huge disappointment, embarrassment of not making it in on the final day with the loss to TNT. So
Yeah, that was brutal.
we have things that we need to overcome. It bothers me that people look at our country as not being a soccer nation or
Yeah,
ruffle their nose at the
yeah,
United States. It does bother me because I'm inside that bubble and I'm working at it. And I can say, hey, yeah, we are a soccer nation. We have great players. We have great Americans that are now playing abroad and doing good things
absolutely.
abroad as opposed to rotting on benches. But we have to really succeed on the men's side at the international level. And we have to become a part of power. We have to become a team that is not just difficult to play against, because that's been the case all the time with the Americans, dating back to my youth in the late 70s and 80s. Yeah, Americans are going to play hard. They're going to be tough to play against. But sophistication in our game, that hasn't been there for most of this time, outside of certain moments. Landon Donovan and that group there in 2002, which surprised everybody. And I'll be honest, even surprised me, being a fan of those guys, to see them to make the run they made.
A nice little.
Um, yeah, but we have to do that. Americans have to do that. World Cup in, World Cup out. We have to be the top of CONCACAF once again. Mexico right now is that.
Right.
Um, I think we've closed the gap. I think our style of play is good enough to where we're going to share in those victories. And hopefully our Olympic team, which I was speaking in another group the other day, and Olympic soccer isn't that important outside the United States or maybe outside this hemisphere when it comes to men's soccer. Um, but for the United States, it's very important for us on the men's game because it gives our guys a chance to grow and continue to be better at younger ages. Whereas our competition at that level has not been good enough to
Yes.
develop our players. And now we're getting there. We're getting there. We're finally getting traction.
Yeah. So Joe, you think it starts at the national team level? Like if they do well, it'll just translate over to the MLS. You think there's a correlation there?
Well, I think the perception around the world is at the national team level.
Right.
Not too many eyes watch our sport, whether it's time differences or whatever. Zlatan brought a lot of eyes to our sport. Pirlo brought some eyes to our sport. David Villa did as well. Thierry
Yeah.
Henry did as well. David Beckham certainly brought a lot of eyes to our sport when he came to the United States. But what we're talking about, I think for us, is having the United States national team do well on a regular basis on the men's side, competition at every position where you have a hard time filling the 23 players on the roster, and to a point where those players then go off and be successful in other leagues around around the world, especially in Europe, where of course that's the gold standard there. So that's the important part. Now, creating those players, that starts at age 10 and 12, where again we've had prodigies along the way, but we have to have a group of young players that have the acumen and the physicality to play at the top level. So in other words, our fruit is ready to pick at harvest at age 17 and 18. And for too long in our country, it has been at age 22, 20 and 22. And that's too late.
Yeah, no, I agree, because my cousins in Italy, they played in Serie D, Division D in soccer in Italy. There's multiple divisions in Italy. It's crazy how many there are.
Sure.
It's A, B, C, D, and then it goes like D2, D3. There's so many. But my cousins played there, and they were scouted and recruited at the age of 12. So they're getting on it quick. I know Spain's even quicker. Argentina's even earlier. It's just there's constant scouts checking them out, and I just don't know why we're not on top of that yet. Like you said, we don't have those. I don't know what exactly it is, but we're just not starting young enough. Years ago, we were 22, like you said, but now we're getting a little younger. So I think we're heading in the right direction.
I think we're there. I think now we do have the framework in place. I think we're getting that. I think the players we're seeing in Europe, going to Europe, even at younger ages. I mean, Pulisic was a teenager when he went over there. We're talking about 15, 16 years old. We're seeing players starting to make their way over. So that's not a bad thing. We just need more and more of them, and at younger ages. I think growing up in that environment here in Southern California, and just how I look back at it now, soccer in this country has been a lot of little tribes. So in other words, you're a director of a club. Name your club. Let's call it Spurs. Whatever, youth club, Spurs, for the sake of argument. That person was making a pretty good amount of money, and he had maybe U12s through U16 or whatever it might be, and that guy might be also the head coach of the local high school soccer team, or maybe it's the parochial school there. So he's kind of recruiting the best players. But that tribe would never want to interact with the soccer community. Don't mess with my business. And for too long in this country, I would say, through the decade of the 80s and most of the 90s, we had that mentality among the soccer community in this country. I was the marketing director for a soccer team for a few years, and it was an indoor team. So I was doing a bunch of different things at the same time. And I met with them all together at one point, and they were just wondering, hey, what are you going to do for us? And I said, well, if we don't succeed, we can't help you. We can't help you. We can't help you if we don't succeed. So we're asking you, we'll give you, 2-for-1 tickets, this, that, the other, but we're asking you to engage so we can engage. And it was kind of the other way around for a long time. Now with Major League Soccer's strength that it has today, it's got its own academies. It is picking the cream of the crop. I'm sure they will continue to work on their scouting of players and so forth, because that's never ending. And sometimes there are players that do, fall through the cracks. And we've seen a few of those guys that are either Mexican Americans or even Italian Americans, Giuseppe Rossi, who fell through the cracks for us and got away on the East Coast. But then again, he also had that passion that he wanted to play for Italy and do that for his father. And you can understand that as well. And we're going to have a few of those guys along the way. So I think we're light years ahead of where we were. I think we still have work to do, but everybody has work to do. I mean, England thinks they win the World Cup every time, but they haven't done anything since the 60s.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like that happens every World Cup. But, I couldn't agree more with you. I do feel very confident, especially after speaking with you, for what the future has for MLS and for the USA national team. Really exciting. And I know the women's national team definitely, sets the standards high for the rest of us. So they're doing a great job. They're killing it. They're on fire lately. So, it leads me to my next point, back to the broadcasting aspect. Before we wrap things up, I want you to just talk about not even some of them. Give me your most memorable moment behind the screen?
Hmm. Well, I
Hate to-
mean, it always goes back to the first championship for the Galaxy in 2002. You know, that was probably the one, only because of the fact that the club had failed on previous, was it 96, 98, didn't make to the final. 99, we were in the final, lost to DC. 2001, we're in the final, lost in overtime. So 2002, and that one winning on golden goal was incredible. I kind of lost my mind on that call. I was doing the radio call for that one.
I listen
Gave
to
people
that.
a camera
I
over
gotta play
TV.
that back. I wish somebody had a recording of it to see your reaction.
So just it went nuts on that. And then my broadcast partner, you guys would know, or if not you, your parents would know, Rick Davis, who
Yeah,
played for the Cosmos, was my broadcast partner back then. He's laughing because I'm a young guy, and in 20, what was I? What was it? In 2002, I was 32 years old. So, that was the pinnacle at the time for me.
right.
But there's a few. David Beckham's first game was an exhibition, was a friendly. Chelsea was in town, and the stadium was jammed. Another friendly where the Galaxy played against Barcelona, 92,000 at the Rose Bowl, and David hits on a 25-yard strike for a goal. And Thierry Henry and Messi are together for Barcelona at the time, and there was a sequence in that match that I don't think the Galaxy touched the ball for 10 minutes. Just what Barcelona was doing. It was just incredible. And the first what was it, the Champions Cup, the first two Champions Cups Galaxy were in, and the Galaxy get a win against Juventus, and the defender Omar Gonzalez scoring the game-winning goal. In that particular game, we're doing it at Dodger Stadium, and I'm broadcasting in a booth that Vin Scully broadcast from. That was incredible for me. Zlatan's 500th goal was amazing. All of his goals seemed to be some type of a highlight reel goal.
He's so special.
Landon Donovan's record-breaking goal at the time. I got to call Landon Donovan's first international goal when he played for the U.S. national team. It was a game that the USA was playing against Mexico in the Gold Cup at the Coliseum. And I'll give you a perspective. I'm an American broadcaster. There's no broadcast for this game on television that you can pick up on ESPN or anything else. It was closed circuit pay-per-view in English. Rick Davis and I are doing the game. It's at the Coliseum in Los Angeles, and the American broadcasters are not in a broadcast booth because there's no room for us. We're on the opposite side in a camera well, and with Sprite bottles being thrown at us.
You can't make
that's how it was. And and we've come a long way. And I know a lot of the young generation says, what are you talking about? We should be a lot better. Well, maybe, but you got to remember where we're coming from too.
Yeah.
So those are a few of the things. And I think if I talk even more, I can come up with more, but
yeah,
there's not really one. I mean, there's really not one. There are great moments, and you just hope they come more and more along the way.
I respect that for sure. And I think what helped the MLS a lot, especially with me piquing interest is when teams overseas would play exhibitions with teams here. For example, Juventus and Milan, all the big Italian clubs would come here to play in New York and whatnot, and Florida, Orlando.
Sure.
And, that to me was a chance for me to go see them, see some of my favorite players in the world, but not only that, support an MLS team at the same time. So it kind of went hand in hand for me, especially. So this whole COVID situation needs to go away. We need to bring all that back because I'm very excited for that. But
hopefully,
Joe, before we go, I have one last thing for you, and then we'll wrap up. World Cup time. I think I already know your answer. Italy's versus USA. Who are we going with?
For me, only because I know that in Italy, if I go to Italy, I'm an American. They will call me an American no matter what. Even though I speak our version of Sicilian here in the United States, so I'm an American. If Italy's playing anybody else, of course, I'll go grab my Italy jersey. But if it's the United States and Italy, I will be for the United States.
I hear that. I respect that. But Joe, listen, it was a true pleasure having you on. Thank you for, sending out some time to speak with us. Hopefully some people, get a chance to look into you, get to know a little bit more about you if they don't already, and, about the whole industry and how times are changing, even though we live in a mad world right now. So Joe,
yes,
I really do appreciate it, man.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I know the audience you have. I feel like I'm at home. So thank you for watching, whoever is watching today. Thank you for doing that. And lastly, I hope everybody can get back to being kind to each other, and lift each other up, because that's what we have to do. We have too much anger going on out there, especially across social media. What I see on social media is not happening in the streets, and we got to also make sure we understand that and work with each other and make sure we get from here to there.
I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Joe Tutino, everybody, LA Galaxy announcer. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.